Imagine waking up one morning to find that your neighborhood is completely cut off. No electricity, no running water, and the nearest store is either sold out or closed indefinitely. What would you do if you had to rely entirely on what you already have at home? Would you be prepared? Or would you scramble for supplies at the last minute? Feel free to share your answer in the comments section. Sometimes it's those unexpected moments that remind us how vital a well-planned emergency food stash can be. Let's talk about 10 foods you might want to keep on hand just in case. This isn't about stoking fear or predicting catastrophic events. Instead, it's about ensuring you and your loved ones have some peace of mind. Life is full of surprises, and a little foresight can make all the difference. In the following minutes, you'll discover not only what to stock, but also how to store it, and why these staples can be lifesavers, both in a crisis and in everyday life. Picture this. There's a sudden weather event that leaves your town immobilized for days. Whether it's an unexpected snowstorm or a severe flood, supplies might not be restocked in stores as quickly as you'd hope. In such a scenario, the humble bag of rice in your pantry becomes a real hero. Rice has a comforting warmth to it, cooks relatively quickly compared to some other grains, and pairs well with almost anything else you can scrounge up. Properly sealed in sturdy, airtight containers, rice can stay fresh for years. Just make sure it stays in a cool, dry place. When you're short on fresh produce, a simple meal of rice and whatever sauce or protein you have on hand can be a true lifesaver. Now think of another kind of staple that can turn into a solid meal in minutes. Pasta. There's a reason it's a go-to in countless households. Dried noodles don't need refrigeration, and if you store them in a dark, dry spot, they'll be ready whenever you are. In challenging circumstances, you want foods that are quick to prepare and not fussy about temperature or elaborate cooking methods. Pasta fits that bill perfectly. Plus, it's universally loved. Kids, adults, picky eaters, or adventurous ones. Almost everyone can find comfort in a bowl of spaghetti or penne with a simple sauce. Keeping a couple of varieties, like regular whole wheat or gluten-free, ensures variety and can accommodate dietary needs in a pinch. If pasta seems too common, consider the quiet power of oats. These little flakes are high in fiber and can be turned into all sorts of meals, from a sweet, soothing porridge to savory patties or cookies. Oats require minimal cooking equipment. Just add hot water or milk, even from powder, and a dash of whatever sweeteners or spices you have. Store them properly, perhaps in a tightly sealed glass jar, and you'll find they last for months on end. No more panicking if fresh bread is nowhere in sight. Oatmeal or homemade oat-based flatbread can step in when you need it most. It's also important to consider your protein sources. Beans, lentils, or chickpeas are nutritious, budget-friendly, and often overlooked as a cornerstone of any emergency stash. For super long storage, you can buy dried beans and keep them in airtight containers. Yes, they'll need extra time and water to cook, but the flavor payoff is worth it. Alternatively, canned legumes make a great shortcut when you're working with limited resources. Pop open a can, rinse, and you're ready to go. In a real emergency, you might not even have the means to soak or boil dried beans for a long time, so keeping a balance of dried and canned is a good idea. You'll thank yourself later when you can quickly whip up a chickpea salad or a lentil soup without too much hassle. Speaking of cans, one quick look down the canned goods aisle in any store reveals a world of possibilities. Tomatoes, corn, peas, carrots, various soups, and even fruit and syrup. Many of these can be eaten straight from the can if necessary. Canned tomatoes, for example, can transform plain rice or pasta into a flavorful meal, and canned fruit provides a burst of sweetness and vitamins that can lift spirits when you're tired of bland foods. Just be sure to occasionally check that the cans aren't dented or rusted, and keep them in a relatively cool place. It's amazing how much comfort a simple canned vegetable soup can bring in a moment of stress. No heavy prep, no complicated recipe, just heat and eat. Now let's talk about water. Too often people overlook how essential it is to keep a supply of clean drinking water at home. Experts often recommend at least a few liters per person per day, covering both drinking and cooking needs. Even if your tap water is usually reliable, main breaks, contamination issues, or power outages can happen. Storing extra bottles or jugs of water is a straightforward precaution. You can go a long time without certain foods, but only a short while without water. Some prefer bottled water, others use large containers or even special emergency water bricks. Whatever method suits you, remember, water is the one thing you truly cannot replace with any alternative in a pinch. Let's move on to something many people forget until they suddenly need it: Sources of fats and oils. Whether you're frying up some canned vegetables or adding a drizzle to your oatmeal for extra calories, oil can make food more filling and flavorful. A good olive oil, for instance, can last a decent amount of time if it's in a dark, cool place. But if you want something even more robust, you could keep a neutral cooking oil like sunflower or canola oil on hand, which often stays fresh longer. Coconut oil is another contender. It's solid at room temperature, quite stable, and can bring a nice aroma to dishes. However, do check the best buy dates and your container's seal. Once an oil turns rancid, it's time to say goodbye. On the subject of flavor, don't dismiss the power of basic seasonings. Salt is an absolute must. It's not only essential for our bodies in moderation, but also a crucial flavor enhancer. Herbs and spices can be game changers in a crisis when you're working with limited ingredients. Have you ever tried plain boiled potatoes without salt or spices? They're barely passable. But toss in some dried basil, oregano, chili flakes, or even a dash of garlic powder, and you've turned a bland meal into something comforting. Dried herbs and spices don't take up much space and can last for quite a while if stored properly. It's worth having a small, organized stash of your favorites, because a little variety can keep morale high in tough times. Just as important as your main meals are small energy boosts and snacks. Nuts, seeds, dried fruits, and protein bars can give you that extra lift when you're low on energy or pressed for time. A handful of almonds, walnuts, or peanuts can deliver healthy fats and protein in one compact, portable handful. Dried fruits like apricots or dates can satisfy a sugar craving and deliver a bit of fiber. You can also think about granola bars or energy bars that combine the best of both worlds. Keep them in a sealed container or somewhere you won't forget them, and do a quick check from time to time to make sure they're still fresh. It's a small effort that can pay off big when you need a quick bite, but can't spare the time or fuel to cook. For many people, life just wouldn't be complete without a little sweetness. Honey, jam, or even some chocolate can bring comfort when everything else seems chaotic. Honey, in particular, is known for its almost indefinite shelf life, as long as you keep it sealed and away from moisture. Even if it crystallizes, gently warming it can bring it back to a smooth consistency. Meanwhile, a simple bar of chocolate tucked away can lift your spirits. Just make sure to keep it in a cool area so it doesn't melt or develop an odd texture. These aren't strictly necessary to survive, but morale matters. When you're stuck at home without power, a small treat can remind you that better days are coming. One final consideration is how you're going to store all these items. It's no good stocking up if everything spoils because of humidity, heat, or pests. Aim for a dark, cool space. Maybe a closet, a basement shelf, or a dedicated kitchen cabinet. If you've got dry goods like oats, beans, or rice, invest in a few good containers or jars with tight-fitting lids. Proper organization helps too. If you're rummaging through a chaotic jumble, you might not notice that one package has been compromised by moisture or insects. If you label your containers with purchase dates, or just rotate them so the oldest is up front, you'll consistently use and replace items before they lose their quality. And try not to buy foods you genuinely dislike. In an emergency, you need nourishment that you're actually willing to eat. So how do you feel about the idea of crafting an emergency food supply? Does it seem too extreme, or do you find it sensible to have a safety net? Let me know in the comments. What would you do if you were suddenly cut off from your usual grocery routine? Let's share ideas and learn from each other, because there's no single perfect way to be prepared. A robust stash might simply mean you're ready for an unusually busy week or a minor setback, rather than a major catastrophe. In the grand scheme of things, having a well-rounded pantry means you're less reliant on last-minute runs for dinner ingredients, and more confident when surprises pop up. We've just covered 10 food categories, but honestly, there could be many more. The key takeaway is that a little planning today can save you a lot of worry tomorrow. Whether it's a fleeting disruption or a more serious event, you'll rest easier knowing that you have a plan and a pantry ready for whatever life throws your way.